So there was a video that I watched recently. It's going over the usage of Orientalism in Sonic, and it was kind of an odd watch for me. Like on one hand, I guess it's because I never really saw what was being presented as offensive to the cultures that were obviously inspirations for what they were doing in a lot of mid 2000s games. But I don't know, like whenever someone kind of brings up the topic of like Orientalism in terms of storytelling, I always kind of assumed it was more so in a negative light, like a stereotypical look at like the Middle East and such, and cultures nearby it. You know, like East Asia, North Africa, or something like that. And I guess it's just, I don't know, in terms of like the characters and what to be using in there, like it never really seemed like it was portrayed in a way that's supposed to be like these cultures bad, American good, because Sonic is partially American inspired. A lot of stuff. I guess it's kind of a odd perspective to kind of look at it from, due to like the very nature of the series. It's always sort of been like an odd mishmash of cultures. Like we have Sonic himself, who's very American inspired in multiple ways, but at the same time he's also very Japanese in terms of presentation. Like you always felt like a sort of an odd mix of Japanese and American storytelling ideas and cultural values. And I guess that's kind of why it resonates with some people in a way, especially like some that probably really into Japanese culture, but still have like something that's familiar, like Western wise to some extent. Especially with just how Sonic's been presented in general over the years, with like different media from different countries. You have all these American made cartoons and the occasional Japanese anime type thing. There's those mangas that rarely ever get translated, but plenty of comic books. It's an odd situation with Sonic in particular. And then when you look into the nitty gritty of it, you have different cultures kind of being mishmashed and such as well. Like you take Knuckles and the Echidna clan for, the Knuckles clan, for example. When they first designed Knuckles, there was obvious Jamaican influences in his design. And that was kind of obvious to me as someone who kind of grew up around that kind of stuff. But at the same time, you look at how his ancestors are presented, and it obviously has like a obvious like Mesoamerican type of deal going on there. Like I guess not so much that, more like, was it Inca or Maya? Whichever one was probably the least liked, and kind of like that whole situation where like a lot of natives actually helped the conquistadors against their rulers. One of those kind of deals. Because obviously, like they even flew Sonic Team out to South America. They actually like went to some ancient cities and looked at some ruins and stuff for inspiration. So in that regard, like when you look at the Echidnas, they're technically sort of a mix of like ancient South American cultures and some Caribbean influences in design as well. So there's like a mix there. And I always kind of assumed that it was the same case for characters like Blaze the Cat and the Babylon Rogues. Like, yeah, there's some Middle Eastern influences with them, But then you look more closely, and it's like the Soul Dimension kind of has some very obvious Oceania, Australia vibes in terms of aesthetics. Like, yeah, you look at the palace she lives in. Like, it has some Middle Eastern influences there. But then you look at the larger area you explore in Rush Adventure, and it's like a bunch of random islands that are just out and about wherever. And a lot of the locals you talk to include like a raccoon with a very Australian accent and a bunch of koala bears. So it's like very Australia coded, if anything. Despite Blaze's appearance being far more Middle East influenced in terms of design. And that's not even getting to the fact that there's like a whole island there that's like very Nordic themed. Like you free a Viking polar bear out of the ice in one level. So I guess in that regard, like it's kind of hard to think about. Like Sonic's always been like an odd veteran. You can even look at Spagonia in Sonic Unleashed. It's literally just a mashup of Spain, France, and Britain in one city. It's kind of funny when you think about it, considering like in real life historically those three countries probably had a lot of wars with each other historically, and they're probably more friendly with each other now, but like I guess that's why I never really thought about if what's presented in Sonic might be offensive, because the characters have always sort of been like a mashup of cultural themes, like different ones. And no one culture in particular has really been portrayed as outright evil. I mean, yeah, there's been like certain characters who seem to have done some messed up stuff. I mean, let's be honest, like Gun can be a pretty good analog for the American military in general. And those guys, it's sort of a toss-up on whether or not they're really in the right. Because, like, definitely not in SA2, but you definitely prefer them over the alien invaders that want to eat you and Shadow the Hedgehog. So it's funny in that kind of way. It's kind of funny how the very American coded Sonic is fighting his own government because they're doing some corrupt shit, and then another game he's helping him fight alien invaders trying to kill everybody. I'm just saying. But yeah. It's a funny mix. It's like Kidna's got some Aztec and Egypt stuff in there. Blaze got some Islam and Australia. Sonic feels like American Japanese hybrid type of thing. And it's kind of funny with like the storytelling in that regard, because like with themes and all that, and really writing, because obviously there's going to be a very different kind of feel between more Eastern and Western storytelling styles, and that does kind of cause some conflict with the fandom, because like obviously some are going to prefer one over the other. There's been a lot of arguing over that, especially with the the tone whiplash of the 2010s writing. Honestly, considering that all these games with all these Middle Eastern influences in the 2000s ended up being the way they are, I'd say it was like surprisingly tasteful, considering like what a lot of Americans thought of the Middle East at the time, you know, with certain events and all that. Like, really think about it, like we're talking about specifically Sonic games from 2005 to 2008 in particular. Like there was Sonic Rush, Sonic 06, Riders 1 and 2, Sonic Rivals 2 even, with the whole Ifrit thing. And the most obvious one being Secret Ring, since it pretty much revolves around like the whole Book of Arabian Nights. It's like that and Ancient Babylon, and Shamar being based off of like I want to say Baghdad or something. It's like in all of these portrayals, it's like none of these different cases of these cultures in this particular part of the world was really portrayed in a way that makes it come off as evil. I mean, yeah, the Babylon rogues are thieves, and there's a bit of like a lore behind that and all that, but at the end of the day, they still like care about their ancestry and shit, and want to like learn more about that, and probably don't appreciate Eggman basically taking their ancestors' tech and using it for his own shit. Because let's be honest, like technically lore-wise, the ancient Babylonians basically brought the hover technology to the planet, and I think it's kind of funny how Eggman seems to have a monopoly on that compared to like every other country in that world. It really makes you think, you know? Like, what are they trying to say about that? Well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe someone who's like actually from these kind of countries might think differently. You could put your thoughts out there. I don't know. What do you think? Because like from what I've seen between like Babylon Rogues being not all bad, and Blaze being a pretty stand-up character, and Shamar just being like another country you gotta save just like all the others, it doesn't seem like the Middle East is really portrayed in a negative light, from what I can tell. At least not much beyond like Babylon Rogues being thieves. But like every culture got thieves, let's be honest. If anything, I can at least appreciate the fact that Jet has some honor to him when it comes to like racing with Sonic and shit. You gotta remember, it wasn't his idea to plant that bomb on Sonic's board. That was all Wave. Jet wanted to win fair and square. I'm just saying. Really though, besides Secret Rings being the most blatantly Middle Eastern themed by default due to the very subject matter of the game being the 1001 Tales of Arabian Nights, it's kind of interesting like seeing how these sort of different stuff from these cultures kind of portrayed in what is essentially a Japanese franchise, even if it is very American influenced to some extent. Like if you look at the whole deal with Solaris in 06 in particular, like it's like a whole deal with a sun god who split into two separate entities, and like some of the themes and stuff going on in there, like it's pretty obvious that they're kind of going for like a mix of things. Like there's definitely some Mephistopheles type energy, some Faustian type shit going on with Mephiles in particular. And Iblis, well, I think the name kind of speaks for itself if you're familiar with like some Abrahamic religions and such. Same with the Ifrit, really, both in the Secret Rings one and the Rivals 2 one. There's like cultural significance in that, I suppose. Obviously, those are like bosses, so it's not exactly good guys and for that stuff in particular, but I don't think those beings are always kind of seen as good in those cultures either, at least not entirely. I think it was about like Jinn in general, really. So you can extend that to Secret Rings. Like born of fire while man was born of clay or the earth in some kind of fashion. And there's like a whole kind of conflict between the two. It's like the Jinn be doing all this stuff in like a spirit world and whatever, and they'll be like beefing with humanity here and there. Like Sometimes it might be friendly, sometimes it might be hostile. Then you got like ones trapped in lamps that have to grant wishes or some shit. And that's how you get like genies. You know, stuff like that. So it kind of makes sense in like Secret Rings. If you're fighting the genie of the lamp, then obviously you probably have like a bunch of smaller jinn as minions you gotta fight as well. Like that just works. Honestly, thinking of Eraser Jinn in particular. It's kind of funny seeing the genie of the lamp as a villain for once. Like, if anything, I guess he kind of works more as a neutral party. Like, he kind of just works for whoever has the lamp. So you never really think too much about, like, his own position and how he got there in the first place. Because I'm pretty sure, like, the whole way it works is that Jinn are kind of stuck doing the whole wish-granting thing as a punishment. At least I'm pretty sure that's how I heard that's how it works originally. And that's why they have, like, all this crazy power, but they're sealed away and can't do much on their own. I guess that's why stuff like the Ifrit kind of works as a boss, since it's sort of out of control and not being sealed up in anything. I'm pretty sure like the Eraser Jinn outright just summons one to cause trouble. And since he's kind of free from his bindings at the time, well, I guess he was kind of he figured out some kind of workaround, actually, since the lamp was still around to hold him back. He was like figuring out some way to kind of obtain power to free himself and be able to just do whatever he wants, cause havoc. You kind of have to wonder, like, how much research did Sonic Team actually do when it came to this stuff? Like, were they, like, making sure they got their stuff accurately, or kind of just, was it surface level? So I'm pretty sure, like, they probably get some stuff more accurately than, like, what you typically expect from some people out there. Like, the Genie of the Ring was still a relatively nice person who wanted to do the right thing. So it's like, it's clearly like not all of the species is evil. It's like some good and some bad. If anything, I think the story is supposed to be like some sort of subtle allegory about abusive relationships or something. Make of that what you will. I guess it's just funny to think about, because like, pretty sure as far as like Sonic games themselves are concerned, they kind of just do whatever with this stuff. I'm pretty sure they, like, there's some text in one of the Gaia gates in the SD version of Unleashed that straight up just references Allah. Like, straight up. Maybe that was by mistake, I don't know. But it's on one of the walls somewhere. And that's getting, like, deeper and, like, specifically like the religious side of things, which is sort of an odd case because deities in Sonic tend to kind of vary wildly. Like, you got Chaos over here and Dark Gaia over there, and the End with all that weird shit it's doing. And you have Solaris as sort of a standout here, where it's probably like the closest thing to outright Satan that you get in a Sonic game. Kind of makes it all the more funny that that's the one that's being worshipped by pretty much the closest thing to like a Italy analog, with Soliana being pretty much their stand-in for Venice. I'm not sure if there's like something you could say about that, like maybe unfortunate implications about the Vatican or something. I don't know. Like, thematically speaking. Which is pretty relevant to those cultures. It's kind of easy to forget from the American perspective that Christianity did originally come from the Middle East, since it basically shares the same type of deity as Islam and Judaism. Like it's all from the same source essentially. They just worship the same god in different ways. Different cultures have conflicting ideals and all that. Luckily, you never really have to deal with the nitty-gritty of that in a Sonic game, thankfully. But yeah, I guess I'm just maybe it's just from like an outsider's perspective. Like I grew up mainly on like Jamaican and American cultures, so maybe I have like a limited perspective on this, but like from what I've seen from the Sonic games from this particular time period, it never really felt like they were portraying characters that are Middle Eastern based in a negative light for the most part. Like, yeah, there's some villain characters. The Babylon Rogues aren't exactly stand-up guys, but like they got some standards. And they sure as hell ain't Eggman or Razor Jin, that's for sure. I guess it kind of depends on about the culture. I feel like someone who's actually from the Middle East probably has like a bit more of a perspective to look towards on this sort of thing. Like how they feel about that sort of thing. Maybe ask them. But to me, I always felt like there's sort of like a back and forth to it. Like you have some good people, you got some bad, and that's always going to be a case with every culture, which is why I'm not too hung up on the fact that the Babylon Rogues are thieves, while Blaze is sort of like this princess with like responsibilities and shit. And I always kind of just saw it as like good character writing from different characters with different morals and such, to like their upbringing and stuff. I never really thought too much on like specifically if it was a negative portrayal of a particular culture. Because let's be honest, if that was the case, I'd probably have to like have some concessions about Knuckles. And I always sort of like his character. Like, yeah, he's not supposed to be the smartest guy, but it's more just like gullibility from basically being isolated most of his life, not being outright stupid. That was always more my gripe with his character, not really so much if they're doing Caribbean stuff correctly, because like, it's always been more superficial on that end. When it came to like actually getting to lore with his ancestry, it's obviously like leaning more towards like old South American stuff in particular. Rather. I don't know. It's nothing to think about. Sonic series is weird like that. Like, feels like every culture is always sort of a mashup to some extent. It's never just a one-to-one of anything particular. At least that's how it always seemed to me. Make of that what you will, in terms of like, if it's appropriate. I thought it was just like a fun little thing they're doing, since like, let's be honest, like world building wise, they were never like doing the deepest stuff to begin with. Oh well. As long as the games are fun and like there's nothing that's straight up just being like outright offensive and portraying anything in particular in a negative light culture wise, I don't think there should be much of a problem. And from what I've seen, I feel like as far as Middle Eastern stuff is concerned, like there's nothing too out there compared to like stuff that I've definitely seen in the past in the 2000s, let's be honest. Like when it comes to portrayals of different cultures, we do have a lot of stuff out there that probably doesn't make different cultures look very good in general, let alone like Middle East specifically. Probably a good thing Sonic was being made by Japanese developers then, really. They're kind of detached from sort of bad blood from a lot of stuff. God damn. Anyways, I guess that's just my thoughts on the matter. Maybe someone actually of the culture might have a different perspective. I have some thoughts on that. Should be considered. I don't know. For me, though, I enjoy these games for what they are. I'm not really, like, looking to be offended by anything they're doing. There's nothing feels all that offensive. Like, they're just making entertainment primarily meant for kids. I don't think it's trying too much to be, like, doing some social commentary on, like, specific cultures or anything like that, so I don't know. Do what you will, say what you will in the comments. I don't know. Maybe there's more to talk about on this, but as long as it's not doing anything that just comes off as outright racist or some shit, I don't think there should be a problem. I mean, Sonic the Hedgehog, for crying out loud. These kind of topics would be kind of weird to be coming up regardless, I guess. I don't know.